Following up on last week's video, we had a conversation with our parents. This week, we're going to be going over our parents' advice, things that they wish they could have done differently, as well as what they learned from the recruiting process.
What was the most difficult part being a softball parent, particularly a pitcher's parent, as we were growing up playing elite level softball?
I really can't say anything was difficult at a major level at all. I was so fortunate because you were good from early on and you just got better and you were focused and all that. So, and because I have a different appreciation of the game than some, like your mother, watching you playing in those difficult situations, like, if you lose a pitch and you're struggling with a pitch and, working to find another way around stuff, watching you go in when, like I said, the bases are loaded, nobody's out. All those things I just loved in those situations because most of the time you were successful. Not always, but most of the time you were successful. And, because you and I are both competitors at heart. And, so I got my competitive juices through you, satisfaction through watching you a lot of times. And so I don't know if I really struggled that much. It was, all those hours and hours on the bucket. There was only the one time where you were throwing change-ups and forgot and threw a rise ball that almost beat me. But there were, the injuries, and there was the times where you struggled a little bit. Well, actually, down the WCWS that one year when all of a sudden you struggled, and we think it was probably because of nutrition.
It was.
Yeah.
I had a protein deficiency and I was severely anemic.
Right. But those were all, short-term things, that go up and you go down and you go sideways and such. But it wasn't a difficult voyage at all. In fact, to the contrary, it was a complete joy being on that ride with you.
So both of my parents said, as kind of mentioned before, was watching me play and push through playing with pain in my arm and my knee. That, just as a parent, that's not fun to watch. Another thing that was difficult for my dad was, seeing all the negative things on social media. I told them to get off of it too. And, he knows that stuff is just a bunch of bull. So, but it's still hard to see that. And obviously every pitcher parent is going to feel some kind of anxiety. And so my dad was, acknowledged that anxiety is very much there, but he was just like, well, it's not me pitching, so I don't, it's whatever. I'm not in this circle having to throw these hitters, so it's okay. Like, I don't know why I'm nervous. So, like I said, very just like chill guy. My mom's was a little bit more emotional. She was saying it was hard to leave me freshman year, like leave me on campus. She said that you have to have a lot of trust in the coaching staff and the people that you leave your kid with. And she was saying how very grateful she was that I got left in Oklahoma. I don't know no other way to say that, but that I came here. So obviously my mom had a lot of trust in the coaching staff here and trusted that they would help turn me into a boss lady. So what was the recruiting process like for you, and what were the biggest struggles that you felt going through that?
My understanding is it was very different back then. One of the things I did was I asked you to give me a list of 10 or more schools that you'd be interested in playing softball at. And I think it was the University of Washington and UCLA. And I don't think you knew any other schools.
No, it wasn't UCLA, it was Stanford.
Or Stanford, that's right.
Yeah.
You really had no knowledge of other schools. But as time went on, that changed a lot. It was harder being from up here, because back then people didn't recruit from the Northwest. Fortunately, you got on some good travel teams and were able to be seen. But one of the things that we did was create a database of coaches and their contact information. And being a pitcher, you have stats that are always changing with every tournament and such. So what we did is we started sending postcards to the coaches regularly with your updated stats and what tournaments you were going to be at. And after a while, coaches started coming around to see who this little girl was that was sending them all these postcards. And so it was, that portion, there was the functional side of recruiting. And it really made a difference because as you got known, as Christina got known, I remember one tournament we were at where there was a lineup of coaches to talk to you, and they had to draw straws to determine the order in which they were going to talk to you. That was a real high. That was a real good thing. The clincher was just fortuitous. You were pitching down at a tournament in California. It was night, and I can't remember the name of the team you were playing, but there was a guy behind the backstop watching the game. And it was John Rittman, coach of Stanford, who was watching his father-in-law's team play against us. And you went in and pitched and shut down the team. And after that, he started recruiting you. So once you started getting recruited from Stanford, that opened the door for a lot of stuff. But that was just a fortuitous, lucky break, whatever. But it's playing the right tournaments, and stuff happens. So it was all in all, it was a real interesting experience back then. How to ups and downs and such, but it all worked out.
How did the stress affect you? Because that's something a lot of people don't really think about. Everybody knows the recruiting process is extremely stressful, but nobody really thinks about how stressful it is for the parents.
Yeah. I think the biggest stress for us was that we were being recruited by lots of East Coast schools. And I remember one of the coaches from Pitt, or I can't remember where it was talking to me, and which she wasn't supposed to be, but it said, just recognize if your daughter goes to the East Coast to play to school, she'll probably never move home. And that was a really stressful thing. After that, with you being recruited by Cornell and, University of Virginia and on and on and on. So, just very fortunate that you ended up at least on the West Coast, same time zone. So that was probably the biggest stress for us. Obviously, the stress for you as a player, as you were stressed, I'd get, probably a little bit more stressed. After a while, it wasn't so stressful because there were a lot of coaches. The question was simply, were you going to get to the school that you wanted? And, once John started recruiting you for Stanford, then it was a foregone conclusion for the most part.
Yeah, because I have so many girls who like, oh my God, my dad's on me for this, and on me for emailing coaches. And it's like, well, yeah, your parents are stressed about this too. Like they're every bit as invested as you are. So you're not the only one who's going to be stressed while you're going through this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was, there's also, there's two parts, one is, figuring out what schools and stuff like that. And you have to, as a parent, learn the NC2A recruiting rules. You can't rely on coaches to abide by them necessarily, because sometimes they don't, such as coaches that talk to you when they shouldn't be talking to you. And the problem, even though it's probably different now, the problem was if you got caught, the coach could be penalized, but you as a parent or the student could get penalized too, the player could get penalized. And that would be obviously catastrophic if that happened. So it's one, getting to know the recruiting rules and process, and then two, functionally, how do you contact coaches? How do you let them know? And it's easier if you're a pitcher because you have all these stats. You're going to the tournaments, updated stats all the time. You could simply, in our case, it was send a postcard, and
yeah. We sent emails too, though.
A little bit, but yeah. The nice thing about the postcard was they get something in their hand.
Oh yeah.
And that's better. It's harder to forget that if they start getting these postcards every couple of weeks from somebody. All of a sudden that goes into their brain better than an email. So yeah, it was stressful, but also fun when you see the coaches, responding to your performances or watching you. So it was good.
So my dad's answer to this was he was very fortunate that we had one of the coaches I had, Coach Gary, that we had him to kind of help guide me through the recruiting process and help guide the parents. He kind of helped manage the parents' expectations and my expectations. But something that my dad did struggle with, I think both of my parents did, was because I was so young, I was getting recruited in seventh grade was when it started. I didn't even know what I wanted to do in college, what I wanted to study. I didn't even know what high school I was going to at that point. So they thought that that was a lot of pressure and that they struggled with that because they knew that that would be kind of a harder decision for me as well. Something else that I'm also really grateful about that my parents were very good at during my recruiting process was not making the experience about them. Even if they felt it, I never felt it. And I'm sure my mom had maybe checked my dad once or twice if he was thinking too much about it. But they, it was my decision and they obviously helped me in figuring out what I valued or where I wanted to go. I had this whiteboard full of everything, like everything that I wanted in a school and what each school ranked and all of that. So they obviously helped me in that decision, but they knew that essentially it was my decision. And I think that that was super important. And I will always be thankful that they did that. My mom was just hoping that I picked the right school that would actually fulfill the promises that they promise you on your visits. And obviously I did. I chose the right school for me.
What did you learn about yourself during our softball journey?
So the response that my mom gave me, and I quote, is I learned what I did not want to be at the softball field. I didn't want to be the parent yelling instructions to my kid during the game. I didn't want to be the parent who gets up and leaves when their kid gets pulled from the game. I didn't want to be the parent who talks down about other kids. I wanted to be fully present during the game, cheering and rooting for the team. And for my dad, he's a naturally very patient, laid back kind of dude. And so I think something that he learned a little bit more about himself was just to enjoy it. I was only going to be in college for, 4 years. So it's just kind of sit back and enjoy that. Same thing, even before college, is just enjoy the journey, enjoy the process.
What's something you wish you would have known before, or what's something that you wish you would have done differently?
One of the things that fortunately I learned when you were in like seventh grade, I would push you to go practice, but I would suggest, I would say, you want to go practice, you want to go throw, and you would push back. And that went on for a little while. And then your mom told me, she said, just quit asking. She'll come around. And sure enough, shortly after I quit asking, you'd come to me and says, I need to go throw. And that never changed. So even though it's something that was taken care of pretty quickly, that was a great lesson, especially for parents out there that have daughters that, love the sport, but you're pushing them to go practice, whatever it is. Don't, give them the opportunity, but if they don't want to do it, don't push them very hard because it's up to them to want to do it. At least that's my experience. So yeah, I think that was a big one. I think it's a great lesson for parents. Other things that I wish I'd known, not really, because we learned as we went, what about softball, but also recruiting and life in college and all that stuff. I mean, you learned and we learned, and so that's kind of how the process is. And you just have to be open to, realizing there's going to be ups and downs and loop-de-loops, and it's that's how it is. I mean, and again, we were fortunate. You were fortunate because you ended up at the level that you wanted to pitch at, and not everybody can get to that level. But as your old pitching coach used to say, it doesn't matter. It's just as much fun to win at level 3 or level 2 as it is level 1. And so it's about the game. It's about competing. It's about the team and all that. So you can enjoy it at every level.
So I asked my mom this, and her response was so my brother's birthday is on June 8th. So his birthday was always spent at a softball field. I think the first time he didn't spend it at a softball field was my freshman year. We were in the World Series and he was like, I'm not coming. And I'm like, honestly, good for you. And so my mom wishes that she would have planned, his birthday celebration like a month before or something like that. And then as for my dad, he didn't really feel like there was anything that we could have done differently or any regrets or anything like that, because even like the unfortunate kind of situations that happen, I got taken, like, we exited those bad situations and it ended up being better for me anyways. So even with the hard decisions, we made the right decision. So, which is obviously very fortunate for that to have gone the way that it did.
So my mom wishes that she would have known before going into it how stressful being a pitcher's parent is, because she would have liked to figure out ways to work around it, because she missed a lot of softball because she wasn't able to handle the nerves of being able to watch, and she feels like she missed out on a lot. What advice would you give to parents now who are either going into the recruiting process or who are just starting competitive softball?
Just enjoy the ride at whatever level you're in this case softball, whatever level your daughter is destined to play at. Just enjoy the ride, whether it's just playing through high school or they want to play in college, whatever. I think, just enjoy it. And remember, it's got to be their passion, not your passion. One of the things that bothered me deeply during your high school days and travel ball days like that was seeing girls lose the love of the game because of their parents. And that's, their parents pushing them too much or trying to intercede in the games and coaching decisions. And yeah, I just saw, some great young ladies lose their ambition because of parents. And, one of the things to remember in softball is you're not going to get a, $100 million contract at the end, so recognize that it's got to be a game of love. Your daughter wants to play in college. It's just a fabulous experience, regardless of the level. Support them and just give them the opportunity and enjoy it. That's all you can do. If you want to get into coaching and such, that's great because they always need good coaches. But if you just want to be a spectator, be a spectator. And actually, the one thing that I'll add, being a coach from my coaching hat, just remember that the girls are yours 24/7, except when they're with the team. When they're with the team, the coach talks to them, other players talk to them. As a parent, you're rooting for the team. If there's issues, go talk to the coach afterwards, or even better, talk to your daughter and have them go talk to the coach about the issues. It's a great learning experience for them. Nicole, did you have any special, like Christina, she'd strike somebody out and she would just stare at him all the way back into the dugout, and especially with makeup on.
I didn't really do that.
She had,
kind of pointed at the catcher and turned around. Sometimes if it was like a bigger strikeout or bigger out, then that's when I would like yell. But
yeah,
I wasn't very animated when it came to like me. But like if someone else did something, I'm very animated. But like when it was with me, it was very like, okay, moving on.
yeah. I remember the fans at Cal, they just absolutely loved it. With her, because as Nicole, she was known as the goth girl. I mean, even the newspaper had her written as the goth girl because she looked goth with her makeup and such, but she wasn't goth at all. But
I remember the first time you showed me a picture of you playing in college. I didn't even know that was you. I was like, oh, who is that? You were like, that's me. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was Christina struggled especially the first 2 years because of the look. I guess it was just the first year. In fact, coach.
No, the first year I didn't have it.
Wasn't the first
year? I was trying to fit in.
Okay, so second year, that's right. And actually, that's right. And coach, when I think it was coach told you that one of the reasons you weren't invited to the Olympic tryouts. Is your look.
Well, they didn't say it in so many words. They said they had to look at the whole package.
Right. Yeah.
So I went and I got a tattoo.
That's right. Yeah. But then everybody changed. I mean, actually, and from Mike Candrea on down, they all changed to appreciate your look and the differences and realize that, we've got to be more than just ribbons in the hair and things like that. Yeah. I remember those times and talking to Candrea and stuff. So, that was You got a lot of people, and that's where, like I was talking about in Hayward when you were pitching against the U.S. Olympic team afterwards, and the parents talking to me and how you went through some difficult times and some nights, a few tears in the eyes and stuff like that, but you weren't going to change. You were going to be you, and everybody came around to you instead of the other way around. You're talking about advice for parents. That's another great piece of advice is appreciate your daughter, your kids for who they are, not for what you think they should be.
So my mom's piece of advice was to just encourage your daughter to find herself, ask questions if she has them, growing in her own space to help find a place that will encourage this growth and, create a good environment for her to grow in. She also said to make sure that you celebrate all of the victories and to make sure that your kid always knows that your love is unconditional and it's not based upon how you perform or if you win or lose or if you got a hit that day, if you struck someone out, all of that. Unconditional love is important. So my dad kind of similarly was saying to just be aware of your kids' environment and their attitudes towards the sport and let them experience it. It's not your experience, it's not your sport, it's not your life, it's their life. And your job as a parent is to help support them and guide them through that process, but it's not your process. You have your own separate parental process. He also emphasized on, kind of similar to my mom, don't have the degrading car rides home where you're just destroying your kid for no reason. They didn't mean to mess up, obviously. And so, tough love is important, but like the whole car ride home is not necessary and can, kind of lead to burnout and them not enjoying the game as much because now they're just playing to please you. They're not even playing for themselves anymore. So once your daughter gets to college, he was saying, he want your kids to make their own mistakes and learn from it. And that's what college is about. You kind of get more hands off. Now you really get to enjoy it. Like your kid is no longer your responsibility. They're growing up, they're becoming a woman, things like that. So just, let them do their thing and enjoy it, be there, support them, and just overall make it a good and enjoyable experience for your kid. It's not about you.
Based on your experience, when would you say is the right time to go from rec ball to travel ball?
So my dad said that essentially when I was in rec ball, one of the coaches just told him like, if she wants to keep doing this, you should probably bump her up to travel ball, play better competition, get better. So, because my dad had no idea at that point, like they didn't know what they were doing. So that advice was greatly appreciated. So essentially a coach just told him like, move up.
How did you help us prepare mentally, specifically on car rides to games or tournaments before college, obviously?
With you, I didn't have to do much because you were so competitive and so focused, that you developed your own routine for getting ready to pitch. And it really followed through in college, obviously. 2 hours before the game, you started putting on your makeup. That was your pre-game ritual.
2 hours before the game, I was at the field.
Oh, that's true. 2 hours before the 2 hour, yeah, true. But hours before, yeah. And you did that kind of thing long enough that, that became part of your brain was trained. Okay, we're going to be going to work here pretty soon. You're getting ready. You're getting, physically ready here with your makeups and stuff and the rest of the routine. So I don't remember having to do too much. I think we'd probably talk about certain batters at times, but not too much because it just wasn't, yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank on that one. I don't know what.
Yeah. I only remember you purposefully making me mad, and that wasn't even every time.
Oh yeah, no.
And that was more when I was younger.
Yeah. Because it was so easy.
It was easy, but it worked.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then I finally realized like, oh, I have to play angry. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually didn't ask my parents this, but obviously I was there, so I can answer it. They didn't really talk that much to me before it was, and if they did, it was never outcome based. Like it was never, how many strikeouts do you want today? How many, like it was never about performance. It was more so how do you feel today? You feel good, whatever. But it was always more of a check-in. And honestly, like the longer car rides, it was either I was taking a nap or we were talking about something like a normal family conversation. It wasn't always just about softball, and I don't think it should be. I feel like there's no point in talking about softball the whole car ride. So there wasn't a lot of preparation with that, I'd say. I feel like I actually learned a lot of my like mental preparation from you and like visualization stuff. Like I did that on the longer car rides if I hadn't been doing well recently, like just put my headphones on, close my eyes and started like visualizing success and stuff. But they were more so there if I had something to say or wanted to have a conversation, I would just start talking about it, or I would ask for advice. Or even if my dad, he never, we discussed the kind of boundary of like him not being my coach anymore, but he would just, even after game, before a game, would just be, how are you feeling? Where's your head at? Things like that. So that would open up the conversation if I wanted to talk about it. And if I didn't, then I said that I didn't want to talk about it. So pitchers and parents, hopefully there was something in here that helps make your softball journey more enjoyable. Bye.